Hey everybody, Derek here to bring another video for The Walking Dead Season 6. And what this video is going to be doing is giving my predictions for the next episode, which would be Season 6, Episode 10, which has been named The Next World. There's been 2 sneak peeks as well as a promo that have been released to highlight some of the things that are coming up, and I'm going to predict what I think is going to happen in this upcoming episode. If you are not caught up with The Walking Dead or with the comics, the TV show, or the comics, and you do not want to be spoiled in any way, then exit the video now and come back later, because otherwise you will be spoiled. Okay. So, obviously when we last left off, the group had come together in Alexandria and defeated all of the walkers inside. So now their community is once again walker-free, somewhat secure. The wall is still down. But, Rick believes that the community can move forward. He has faith that the survivors inside Alexandria have understood now how to survive, what it takes to survive, and now they're going to build their own world. And he believes that this can be done now. And he tells Carl on the hospital bed that that's the first time he has felt this way since he first woke up from his coma in Season 1. Well, when we pick up in Episode 10, I think there's going to be a bit of a time jump. I don't know how much, but one of the things that you notice in one of the sneak peeks is that Eugene gives Rick and Daryl a map. They're in a car of various different farms and I think silos, basically different farming areas in the nearby area, because they're obviously going to be trying to get supplies. We saw back in Season 5 Season 6 episode, I believe it was Now, my apologies, in the 5th episode of Season 6, we saw that the group had been struggling with food. They had run short, and people went in and were starting to take the food out before Spencer told them not to. Well, obviously, even with rationing, that's going to run out, and even though we've had a couple of deaths in the community, there's still quite a few people there, thankfully, that are going to need help, and they're going to need sustenance, they're going to need food, they're going to need supplies. And that's what it seems that Rick and Daryl are going to do. And you notice outside the community that they've set up traps, kind of like Morgan had in the town, and that the prison later used in Season 4 in order to trap walkers. So they've pretty much utilized this area, and you see some walkers impaled on the poles. Obviously, that's going to take some time to set up. So obviously, a little bit of time has gone by, but whether it was a week, a couple of weeks, maybe a month or more, I'll be very interested to see, but it looks like there has been some time that has passed. And it looks as though Rick and Daryl are going to be going on a supply run. They are going to be going out and trying to get food for the community. And obviously it seems that they're going to run into trouble, because the description of the episode says, a seemingly simple scavenging run proves to be very tricky when our group isn't the only one vying for an unexpected supply gold mine. That is the description of the episode. And it makes me believe that Rick and Daryl are going to run into some problems. Somebody else or some other group is going to be trying to get the supplies. And you see in the promotional photos, you see that there's a tractor that has the words, something along the lines of, "We will be back for these supplies." Basically claiming them, if you will. And, maybe Rick and Daryl will run into this and wonder, was this written before? Is this somebody who, left this months ago and they're dead now? Or is it somebody that recently wrote it down? And I think that they're going to be debating about whether to take the supplies or not. And I think that they're going to run into trouble. from the individuals that are claiming these food supplies. Along the way, I think that we're going to see Rick and Daryl exchanging some dialogue. I think that the two of them really haven't seen each other for a while. Since, the start of the season, we've seen that Daryl was outside of the community. And I think that, with the time that has passed, I'm going to assume that Daryl probably told Rick all about the Saviors, Negan's group. I think he's going to tell Rick about, hey, we ran into these guys on the road. They were talking about Negan. We don't know who this guy is, but they were very intimidating. They definitely had resources, very scary. We almost didn't make it out of there. Plus, he's probably going to tell them about Dwight. I think they're going to know about Daryl's interaction with Dwight, the Saviors that he ran into out there. I think that obviously we're going to hear about these interactions, and I think that this is really where, Rick and Daryl are going to be exercising a lot of caution. Because while we've seen that Rick believes in this idea of creating a better world for Carl, Judith, and everybody else in Alexandria, I think that really a lot of the efforts are just going to be focused on Alexandria. It's not so much about trying to assimilate with the rest of the world. It's going to be more about, we have our walls, we have our people, we have the group trust going, and we don't want to mess around with that. So we're just going to stick with what we know. And if anybody else shows up, well, maybe we'll let them in, but we need to, screen them, kind of like how we've been doing before. So even though Rick has this great idea for the community, and even though Daryl was a recruiter, I don't think that we're going to really be seeing Daryl actively recruiting. I think, again, his experiences with Dwight and with the Saviors combined, I think are going to be enough to make him go, you know what? There's too many dangerous people out there. It's not worth it. And again, I think that Rick has not abandoned his survival instincts. Just because he's living behind the walls does not mean that he's not going to have his guard up. And if he runs into anybody out there, I think he's going to use the same exact kind of caution he did with Aaron. Whenever Aaron met up with the group in the distance, Rick knocked him out, tied him up, went through all of the potential possibilities that this guy was lying to him, and only after so much convincing did he actually follow through with the plan and believe Aaron. And I think that if they run into somebody out in the open, I think it's going to be the same thing. Now, there's two possibilities of what I think is going to happen with Rick and Daryl. They're either going to run into the Saviors, or they're going to run into who I think is the character Paul Jesus Monroe. I think it's going to be one of those groups. The reason why I say that is because obviously we have, the description saying that they're going to be running into somebody else. And I don't think that it really makes a lot of sense for them to bring in this random group. I just think it would be a waste of an episode. On the one hand, I think they might run into the Saviors. There is a good possibility that this is the encounter that finally makes the group aware of what's going on. Because granted, the only Savior that we at least know has seen someone from Rick's group and lived is Dwight and Sherry, of course. And whether they've been recaptured yet or not is a big question. But I don't think that anybody survived that explosion from the last episode, when Daryl blew up all the Saviors. I'm assuming that nobody survived that. I might be proven wrong, but there's more reason to believe that nobody lived that, because the explosion just seemed to incinerate everything that was in that circle, which was all of the Saviors. So obviously we don't know if Dwight has enough information to find Daryl and the rest of Alexandria. He might, but he might not. So that's a question. And this might be an encounter that later leads to some of the other big events that are going to happen when the Saviors and Negan finally do meet up with Rick's group. We know that's inevitable. We know it's going to happen. But what is going to be the event that triggers this? Is it going to be Dwight, or is it going to be that Rick and Daryl run into members of the Saviors out here? They kill a couple of them. The rest get away. They go back. everybody starts comparing stories, and everybody keeps hearing about Daryl. You know, the guy with the vest with the wings on the back. I mean, I think that that's going to be how they recognize him, and I think that's going to be something that helps them know, the Saviors know, that they're running into the right group when they do. I think that's going to be a big thing that's going to end up happening. The other possibility, again, is that it might be Jesus Monroe. And for those of you who don't know who Jesus is in the comic books, Jesus is a member of the Hilltop community. He's very athletic. He's, you know, a bad ASS. That's really the most appropriate way that I can think of to describe this man. He basically goes out into the, you know, open and tries to find other communities to work with the Hilltop, you know, that has about 200 residents. And they're more of a rural type of living. They actually do farm. They're mostly living out of trailer homes, mobile homes, and a big mansion that they have. So it would make sense that they are the ones that are going to find the food supply, and would be the ones that would, you know, be trying to find this type of supplies. So it does make me think that it is Jesus that they're going to run into, Rick and Daryl. And of course, Jesus is very, you know, physical. He's pretty much able to fight very well with just his bare hands and legs. You know, has some kind of karate, if you will, something that allows him to fight. In the comic books, Michonne and Abraham run into him, and Jesus is very, you know, reasonable, if you will. He doesn't want to necessarily attack and kill people, but he is not afraid to do so if he feels that it's a threat to himself. Because Michonne is, you know, holding the sword at Jesus, and Abraham is pointing the gun, and the three of them just keep on fighting with each other. Like, there's one point where Jesus had Michonne's sword against, you know, her throat, and Abraham is basically able to, you know, help distract Jesus so that Michonne can get out of that grip, and then Jesus is able to get Abraham hostage, and Rick ends up coming to the scene and goes, "What the heck's going on here?" Finds out about Jesus' story. You know, Jesus tells him he's from the Hilltop, he's recruiting people, and Rick doesn't believe him. He doesn't think that this kind of a thing is possible, and knocks him out and takes him back to the community and ties him up and interrogates him. And I think something very similar is going to happen here. Again, I think they're going to run into Jesus. I think that Jesus is going to be, you know, again, a reasonable person. But on the other hand, you know, he's not going to give up the supplies willingly. I think that, again, he's from a community, and, you know, Rick and Daryl are from a community. They both have people that they need to take care of. And I think that it's going to end up in a conflict, because we see Daryl holding a gun on somebody and saying, you know, hold it right there. You know, and I think that it is going to be Jesus. And I think that they're going to fight. And I think that, you know, Jesus may continue to, you know, again, defend himself, but explain, you know, what's going on. And I think that there's a good chance that Daryl may tell Rick, like, hey, you know, he kind of looks like one of the saviors. You know, this group that he's talking about, this group of 200 people, this might be, you know, Negan's group. He might be one of Negan's men. We need to find out all we can from him, which may result in them taking him prisoner and taking him back to Alexandria. So I think that's very likely to happen. I think that it's more likely that it's going to be Jesus that they're going to be running into, and that they're going to take him back to Alexandria by the end of the episode. Plus, the title being called The Next World kind of makes me think that it is going to be Jesus from the Hilltop, because the Volume 16 title is called A Larger World. Obviously a little bit of a difference, but I think that it's indicating, you know, this idea of, hey, you know, Rick and the group are able to establish Alexandria, but now they're going to learn that it's not just Alexandria that exists, it's other communities, which is something that Rick never thought of. But now this possibility is going to be, you know, presented to him, and he's going to have to decide, is this true? Do I take the chance? Or no, this guy's a liar and we got to take care of him. And again, I think it'll be a mix of the two, which will lead to the story later on. And then the only other big thing that they really showed was Spencer and Michonne. And you have Spencer, who obviously is going to be in somewhat of rough shape. Lost his brother, lost his father, now he's lost his mother in the span of just a couple weeks. Imagine losing just one of those people in your life, at any point. I mean, that's got to be hard enough, but now he's lost everybody. And, we see Michonne telling Spencer, let me help you, and Spencer saying you can't. So I think there's a couple of possibilities there. One is that maybe, Spencer really is going to be in a bad place, very depressed, maybe putting himself at risk more than he should be, and he may become reckless, which may result in, them fighting walkers, him putting himself in a scary situation. Michonne has to save him. I could also see this as being a little bit of a play on maybe Spencer is trying to look for Deanna. I know that might sound a little far-fetched, but one of the promo pictures showed a walker arm that might have been Deanna's. And it makes you wonder, did the walkers devour Deanna in the room, or is she still a walker? And maybe Spencer is going out into the open to try to find her because maybe some of the walkers got out and she wasn't there. Another possibility is that maybe he's going outside of the walls to bury his mother. I know that wouldn't really make a lot of sense, but he may have different purposes. But it'll definitely be interesting to see how he is, because his comic book character is very, at times, selfish. We kind of saw that pop up in season 6, episode 5. He stands up and makes himself out to be somebody great, but then takes the food anyways out of selfishness. And it makes you wonder, what is he going to be like now that he's lost his family? Is he going to be more reckless? Is he going to blame Rick for a lot of the things that have happened? Or is he going to cooperate? Definitely something that I'm very interested to see play out over the next couple of episodes, but I hope they do feature that. So with that, I'm going to bring this video to a close. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions or comments, don't be afraid to leave them. Feel free to subscribe. I do have more videos coming. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, don't be afraid to suggest them. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and thank you very much for watching.